Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. And today we've got a cool video for you that's maybe a little bit outside our normal area of subject matter. I don't just love World War II era ships, I love all naval history. And one of the coolest time periods for naval history is the ancient Mediterranean era, when oar-powered galleys are fighting each other in a series of naval wars. We've never had a chance to talk about this before. The naval traditions that are founded hundreds of years before the Common Era are carried over into modern navies, especially modern Western navies. And that's why today we're up here on the main deck with Olympia framed behind us, because Olympia is the closest thing to an ancient ram warship that I had to film around here in the Philadelphia area. So, it seems like every 6 months we do a video on ship naming conventions, and this is going to be another one in that series, but I think this one's going to be extremely different because we're going to look at a cool new article that just came out earlier this year where researchers went through and they looked at the names of Athenian triremes from the 4th century BCE. And fortunately, those names, a naval register, had been carved in stone, I believe at the Piraeus, which is the naval port near Athens. And so those ship names were all preserved to modern times. So this means that we have a snapshot of what the names of the Athenian fleet were at one specific time during the classical era. And that tells us a lot of information. It seems like not many people had looked at these names to glean any specific information out of it prior to the study that concluded earlier this year. So first off, there's a link to the article in the description down below if you're interested in reading it for yourself. It is written by Georgios Apatos. He is the researcher who did all the work on this, and his conclusions are really interesting in what he was able to find. He was specifically looking at these names to put them into categories to see what sorts of things the Athenians were naming their ships after. And that's really interesting because I think we're going to see a lot of similarities here to how we still name ships now in the 21st century. To see how we still name ships now in the 21st century, some 2,500 years since this list of ships was first written down. So today we wanted to give you an update on our mattress from Brooklyn Bedding. Trooper and I got this, what do you think, Troop, a couple of months ago? And I say our mattress because I might be the owner, but I'm certainly not the person who spends the most time in it. Isn't that right, buddy? Trooper here spends about, 20 hours a day enjoying this mattress. I get 6 or 7, usually with him pushing me towards the side of the bed. Anyway, this mattress is the Aurora, like the Russian cruiser that was saved as a museum ship, and it is by a company, Brooklyn Bedding, like everybody's favorite American class of cruisers, the Brooklyn class. So real easy for you guys to remember. My old mattress was older than Trooper here, who at 14 is quite the elder statesman. But this new mattress is way softer than the other one, and it doesn't have a person-sized dent in one side and a beagle-sized dent right in the middle. Are you looking for the perfect night's sleep at a great price? Brooklyn Bedding has been crafting top-tier mattresses since 1995, starting with one man's dream and a whole lot of hustle in Arizona. There's another great ship name. Today, every mattress is handled in-house and shipped straight from their Arizona warehouse to your front door. These mattresses deliver premium quality without a premium price tag so that you and your loved ones can get the best night's sleep ever, along with a limited lifetime warranty and free shipping right to your door for residents of the United States. The best part about all of this is that Brooklyn mattresses are assembled right here in the United States at their Arizona factory. This means that they can use premium materials like the ones that went into building Battleship New Jersey at a reasonable price. If you're looking for a new bed for you or your loved ones, check out brooklynbedding.com. Check out the link and the discount code in the description down below to get 30% off your next order. It's worth pointing out that these are not the earliest attested ship names. The name Argo is attributed to Jason's warship, which dates back to about the 13th century BCE, although we don't know that the name dates back to the same time as that legend. And we have the names of ancient Egyptian warships from around the same time period, and they seem to name ships after pharaohs, gods, the sorts of things that you would think of. But those are individual ship names. This is probably the oldest recorded list of the names of the ships in a fleet that we're ever going to see. And it's not a complete list of names, but it is something like 270 or 280 warships. And typically, a large naval power in the ancient Mediterranean city-state world would have been somewhere between 300 or maybe, on very rare occasions, 400 warships maximum. So having 270 out of 300 ship names is something that, quite honestly, it's incredible that it survived this long. So being able to know what some 90% of the names of the ship in the fleet of the largest naval power in Greece is really important information. Other city-states were definitely looking to Athens, the most powerful naval power, for ideas on how to operate their navy, and so it's likely that they would have used very, very similar naming conventions. And that seems to hold true because these naming conventions seem to continue through Roman times, through more modern times, all the way to modern ships. So Abydos broke down the ship names into several different categories. The smallest category, with only 10 ships attesting to this name, are named after animals. So like lion, snake, or other animal attributes like lion skin. Now, obviously, this is a naming convention that continues to modern day. Right across the river behind Olympia is the submarine Bakuna, which is named after a type of fish, like most American World War II era submarines. While most Virginia-class submarines have place names, some of them do still carry some of the fish names from World War II. Next up on the list is war-related titles. You've got ship names like Spear Point, Line of Battle, and Of the General, which might indicate that that ship was a flagship. The Athenians used the same term, strategos, to refer to both admirals and generals. They would elect 10 of them each year, and then those guys would serve in whichever type of operation it ends up being. Oftentimes, the exact same folks who are the sailors on your triremes are going to be the soldiers in your army, the hoplites, or hoplites, as it's sometimes called. Next up on the list are what they're just labeled as simple names. So these are things like female names that don't necessarily relate to gods or goddesses or divinity, which is a different category that we'll get to in a moment. Or sometimes just like terms for victory. The word that shows up the most common in ship names is Nike or Nike, because the ancient Greeks really loved tennis shoes. Now, the modern brand is named after the Greek word for victory, which the first marathon runner shouts after completing the marathon from Marathon to Athens, runs up the Acropolis, shouts Nike, we won the battle of Marathon, and then drops dead. So that word not only reference to victory, also has other social connections in Athens and Athenian history. It's interesting seeing so many ships on the list, something like 8 or 10 of them, named after female names. It's unclear entirely who is responsible for naming ships. In some instances, it seems like the builder, in some instances, the owner, in some instances, the state. There are even some ships which are donated voluntarily by other powers that come with a name. For example, the king of Syracuse gives Athens a ship. Alternatively, there are ships that are captured in battle, and those often will keep their original names too. Behind me, the blue-hulled sailing ship is an iron-on carrier named Mushalu. She had previously been a German ship that was captured during World War I. But it's interesting seeing the names of females attributed to ships. This could be the shipbuilder or the ship owner, because oftentimes ships were the responsibility of individual wealthy citizens. If the Athenian Navy is 300 ships, they'll take their 300 wealthiest citizens and say, all right, you are now responsible for the upkeep of this vessel or producing this vessel for the Athenian fleet. So those guys might have had a say in naming the vessels, so perhaps these are named after wives, daughters, that sort of stuff. But it's perhaps the earliest indication that ships are thought of as female. Not all of these ships have female names. Not all modern ships have female names. But modern American ships are always referred to as female, and the female names associated with ancient Greek ships may show that that goes all the way back in time, which is really cool. Number 4 on the list is place names. Look at us on the Battleship New Jersey or the cruiser Olympia across the river. That one is really interesting. Some of the place names are references to battlefields. Some of them are references to allies. Some of them are references to religious sites or places in Athenian territory. So right now, the most common type of location ship name is definitely things like New Jersey that are referring to the names of places in the mother country. But we also have ships that are named for allies. Canberra, named after the Australian city. We also have ships that are named after battle sites. Bougainville's under construction, Iwo Jima, like all sorts of places like Gettysburg, I think was just decommissioned. About 24 of them are grouped into a category that's just listed as miscellaneous. And these are things that couldn't necessarily be grouped into other categories, or in actuality, a lot of them there are 3 or 4 that share very similar names, but they didn't want to make this list of categories too long. So for example, some are named after more artistic terms, tragedy, comedy, the types of plays. So like that could be its own category, but it would only be a couple of ship names. I would love to know if these small name groupings are because a single individual, whether it's the shipbuilder or that rich person who's forced to operate these ships, if they are picking these names that are all tied together, or if it is just a wider trend and you've got several different shipbuilders who are saying, I'm going to name this after my favorite type of play. One is named horse race, one is named music. So again, artistic expression or a sport. Perhaps horse race is trying to imbue the ship with a characteristic. That's actually a different subject we're going to see later on, but maybe it's trying to symbolize speed or something like that. And that's actually our next characteristic. 10% of the ships of the Athenian Navy are given actual characteristics. These are names like leaf, young, or sunburnt. And these are probably references to the ship itself. For example, sunburnt is kind of a reddish brown color. That's probably referring to the color of the hull of the ship. Young could be referring to the age of the vessel. This is a new ship, or maybe it was made out of new trees, young trees. And likewise, leaf. Is it a reference to leaves of the trees that the ships are made out of? Is it a reference to the shape of the hull or the shape of the blades of the oars? Or is it like this ship floats around like a leaf? Regardless of what the actual meaning is, it seems to be a characteristic of the vessel itself. Characteristic names are far more common on modern ships as nicknames because they tend to have their names assigned ahead of time. But Black Dragon would be a characteristic nickname that would fit into this category because it's referring to the color of the vessel. Abstract concepts is the next name, and this is also about 11 or 12% of Athenian ships. They're named things like luck, honor, freedom, independence, victory, those sorts of abstract concepts, and we certainly see those names continued down today. The museum ship Victory, Nelson's flagship. If she had been built in Greece, she would have been called Nike or Nike. recently commissioned vessels like Freedom and Independence would also fit into this category. Next up, about 15% of Athenian warships are named after abstract characteristics. Things like sunlight, strength, manliness. These are things that we still see carried on today in ships like minesweepers. The USS Lucid out in Stockton, California, that's a museum ship you can visit. Minesweepers like USS Lucid in Stockton, California, a museum ship you can visit, embodies this. Other similar ships like Alert would share characteristics like this. The aircraft carrier Intrepid is another perfect example of this name type. And that brings us to the final category. 25% of Athenian warships are named after mythology, religion, mythological figures. So here you have things like the gods. So some ships were named of Zeus, of Artemis, things like that. Interestingly, no ships are named after the god of the sea, Poseidon. So that's clearly a decision that's made to not do that. We don't know why. This is a ship name that still carries on to the present day, with ships like Jupiter, the small green tugboat you can see behind us. Also covered in this category are mythological heroes. Ajax, Achilles, the folks from Homer's epic poems. And I would argue that that tradition carries on, and really this shouldn't be called mythology, it should be called things of cultural relevance. And this characteristic is carried on in modern ships. Look at any of the Arleigh Burke destroyers, which are named after American heroes. Folks like Arleigh Burke himself, William Halsey, those sorts of names. You also see these on aircraft carriers with mythological heroes like George Washington. Like, I know he's not a mythological figure, but functionally he's filling that same like founding individual hero type role. And this is similar to Theseus, the most famous Athenian from the Age of Heroes, who may well be tied to a very ancient historical figure who was sent as a slave to Minoan Crete and managed to come back, or it may just be a mythological figure. Now, this list of ships might be a snapshot in time, but it's very interesting to see that certain names like Nike, Victory, Freedom, and Democracy show up on Athenian warships over time. And like, for example, Victory is used as the name of ships for a continuous period over about 50 years. Triremes are very lightly built ships. They have extremely finite lifespans, much shorter than wooden ships today that are much more heavily built, or of course steel-hulled vessels. So seeing these names show up periodically over half a century or more really shows that that is the type of name that is important and being reused. And we see that same kind of reuse nowadays. New Jersey, of course, has a new submarine named after her. She is herself named after an older New Jersey. So fairly continuously from 1906 to the present day, 120 years later, there has been a ship named New Jersey. So I think it's incredibly cool that our Western naming conventions for warships dates back at least 2,400 years, maybe even further than that. I think that's absolutely incredible that even though we've gone through several different civilizations, several different societies, several different cultures, we're still using these very, very same conventions in naming ships. What's more, despite language changes, some of the names are the same. Independence, Victory, we still see ships named like this nowadays. Even though you see the percentages in various categories shift over time, the actual names stay relatively familiar. So, what do you think about the categories listed here? It's very interesting. This gentleman is clearly an archaeologist and he's looking at the names in the past. If we look at it from more of an anthropological viewpoint, where we're trying to see how that informs the present day, how would you relist these categories? For example, I would relist the mythology category to more of a cultural point of relevance. We don't really name ships after religious things so much anymore, at least in the United States, but we still name things after cultural heroes as opposed to mythological heroes. Let me know how you would redo this list to make it work for both modern and ancient ships. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below for ways you can donate to support the museum. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find about the museum and our channel. Thanks for watching.